Just got a quick screencast here for you about some of the early problems associated with the progressive era. Just a screencast of our basic student notes. As far as their introduction goes, wanted students to think about what the word progressive means. And again, the root being progress and this idea about society progressing was part of the intro discussion. What were the problems that might arise from rapid industrialization, urbanization, and immigration? And looking at the progressive movement, we're going to see that the progressive movement is going to attempt to solve problems that are arising out of this particular situation. And again, how can those problems that are created be fixed is a big part of what progressives are trying to accomplish. I'm going to go to the next slide here. What were some of those issues caused by rapid industrialization, urbanization, and immigration of the Gilded Age? Well, we got a list of them here for you. One of them is wealth disparity. During this time period in the Gilded Age, leading up to the Progressive Era, 4,000 families in America controlled as much wealth as all the remaining 11.6 million families. And this is quite the disparity, meaning this small group controls at least the half of the wealth, and then the rest is shared by this number of people. Again, giving you the idea that in this time there are people that have a lot of money, and then most people don't have much at all. Workers' rights was another issue, a strong issue in the Gilded Age. 25% of workers, of non-farm children, worked full time, and they were under 14. So this gives you an idea of how many people are actually having to work that in our society today we would think maybe shouldn't be working full time. Working conditions was another issue. Between 1880 and 1900, there were about 35,000 people that died a year in work-related injuries or deaths, work-related accidents, and another 536,000 injuries each year during that time period, which gives you an idea that the conditions that people worked in weren't weren't that safe back then. Poverty in cities was an issue. Tenement buildings, which you'll learn a little bit more about in this unit, and poor sanitation. These are very cheap apartment buildings that are overcrowded and dangerous. And just the idea that cities were growing at such a rate that authorities really couldn't keep them clean, and sanitation becomes a problem, and the spread of disease becomes a problem as a result. Racial discrimination was another problem in the Gilded Age. Between 1870 and 1920, there are 24 million new immigrants coming to this country, and a lot of them, I mean, the majority of them, are coming from Eastern and Southern Europe, and they would face discrimination in America's cities. Lastly, it's kind of covered up here, it'll go away in a second, but corruption and social justice. Before 1930, less than half of the American population received more than a grade school education. This is an idea that perhaps because more than half of the population did not have a lot of wealth, that they didn't have a lot of opportunity to advance their station in life through education. Progressivism itself is a movement based on the idea that new ideas and honest, efficient government could bring about social justice that could fix those problems of the Gilded Age. It was a blend of liberal concern for the poor and working class and conservative efforts to stabilize business and avoid economic chaos. Truly, you will see, and let me back it up here a second, but you will see in this movement truly a blend of both left and right wing ideas kind of working together to improve society, which, again, back then was something new and it's something we don't often see in our world today. As we go to the next slide, progressive beliefs, beliefs that progressives held. One of the things that most of them wanted to do was to move away from what they would call laissez-faire ideas involving government, and they wanted to regulate industry. So laissez-faire means leave alone. They wanted to abandon this philosophy, not entirely, but restructure it and allow the government again to regulate industry rather than leave it alone. They also wanted to make the U.S. government more responsive to the people, expand who could vote and what they could vote for so that they would have more of a direct voice in government, and maybe more or increase their voice and reduce the voice of corporations or conglomerates in government. Also limiting the power of the political bosses. Again, this is about putting the power back in the hands of the people, the individual voter, not the people that are running the political parties. Improve workers' rights, conditions for poor and immigrants. Again, back to the problems we saw in the last slide. These were key. Clean up the cities. This is the sanitation idea. And end segregation and Jim Crow. And this is again about social justice and racial discrimination. Kind of stated this way, the goals for reform: social justice, improve working conditions in industry, regulate unfair business practices, eliminate child labor, and help immigrants and the poor. All this falls under social justice during the progressive movement. Political democracy: give the government back to the people, get more people voting, and end corruption, end political machines, meaning where the political bosses work with businesses to make decisions for people, and the people's voices are shut out of even local politics. Economic equality: fairness and opportunity in the work world, regulate unfair trusts, and bring about changes in labor. Demonstrate to the common people that the U.S. government is in charge and not the industrialists. This isn't about kind of socialist or communist economic equality. It was more about equality of opportunity, both for businesses and individual people in our economic system. And lastly, conservation. Preserve natural resources and preserve the environment is also a part of the progressive movement. That's about all I have for this screencast. Hopefully, some of these core ideas of the progressive movement make sense. Thank you.